Yes, I think so too. Because in a way, I think reincarnation is that word, or when we think about reincarnation, it's a very constricted term in a way. Because what I have arrived at is that maybe we are multiple beings in a way at the same time. Maybe I'm actually existing several places at the same time. It's like I have different perspectives at the same time, different places. Because to me, it's not logical that I was just Jannecke and that's it. I feel like I've been many places at the same time. Maybe I'm on a different planet at the same time. And I wanted to ask you that, has he been speaking about extraterrestrial life?
Yes, he wrote a book, or he included material in his larger work about encountering spirits from other planets. He says that, why would God want to make a whole universe and just have one planet where there's sentient life? And he says that in the afterlife you can, rub shoulders with people from all over the universe. That because there's not space and time there, it doesn't matter how far away somebody was physically, you can communicate. He does talk about getting ready to travel to spirits who had lived on another planet, and it did take sort of time because they think differently from how we think, and because, as we said before, the spiritual world geography is based on similarity or dissimilarity in thought and feeling. So if you're going to people who think really different, that's the equivalent of travel here. So he had to prep, but it didn't take that long, a couple of hours, So he called them all human. He said we're all the human race, even though I don't think that necessarily means biologically everybody's the same species, but whatever his qualifications for human, he just said, no, that they're part of the human race. The human race is this one thing that encompasses everyone who's able to accept love and wisdom. And he goes into all this detail about how they talk and walk but really focuses a lot on their spiritual beliefs, because that's what's sort of important to his writing. And generally,
are you still speaking about the extraterrestrials?
Yes,
okay.
That's right.
Their spiritual belief,
their
right?
Spiritual belief. Yeah, like
what
not
do they
just like,
believe in?
Exactly, exactly. And talking and generally, they're better off than we are spiritually. Although there's a couple examples of them being worse, but most often he finds the extraterrestrial spirits are more love-centered and have more true ideas in their heads than we are. He said Earth's got a lot of work to do.
Right. I mean, it's, again, difficult to speak about extraterrestrials because there are probably like millions of races and different beings, and yeah.
Yeah, I would think, if it's really true that they're discovering so many exoplanets, that if even a fraction of those are inhabited, suddenly Earth is just like a teeny part of the equation.
Yeah, and maybe some of them are not as physical either. I mean, maybe like you spoke about these ancient beings or humans, maybe they have reached this state where they are just more light beings and less dense in a way. I can imagine that. And that led me to think that, so where do they go when they die? If they're already if they're already spirits, like, do they go to a different heaven or afterlife? And it just got really complicated in my mind. But I assume it's kind of the same afterlife. No. This gets so complicated because it's dimensions again, probably. Yeah.
I think, I guess at some point we'll be able to ask them for ourselves.
Yes.
But yeah, according to Swedenborg, that there's sort of like, there's all these different levels within the spiritual world, but you can cross over there much more easily. Like it's harder to pierce the veil between physical and spiritual. You'll get people who have these experiences like a Swedenborg or all these other people, but when you're in the spiritual world, even though there's a bunch of different levels within it, it's much easier to communicate across those. So it's not the same kind of does it exist, does it not exist that we have here.
Right. So let's speak a little bit about the more dark spirits, because that is something that I find difficult to think too much about, and at the same time I don't want to ignore it. I want to know if it's there and then know kind of how to deal with it. So what is his perspective on if there are dark energies and or if there are a hell, and what that is, and what dark energies are, or beings, and why in a way some are, you know, not moving towards the light?
Yeah. You know, there's a story that I once heard about somebody who was visiting a place that was really sort of war-torn, you know? And so she went there and her friend was with her who was, you know, from the area. And he said, listen, you don't want to stop at these stoplights. Even though they're red, just go right through. In this part of town, it's just like a suggestion, you know, because you're going to get robbed if you stop, right? So it's a really bad place on Earth, right? So if, you know, you've got people like that on Earth who are like predatory, looking to hurt people, trying to steal things. And when we all die, we go to this spiritual world. You stay who you are. I mean, in that certain sense. So if you've spent a life cultivating this joy in harming other people or enjoy from the advantages that brings, it doesn't just fade right away. You still are trying to do those same kind of things. So that's the source of all this negativity that Swedenborg encountered. And he does talk about, just like you would talk if you visited any major city, you could talk about, hey, I had great experiences and I had not great experiences, or visited anywhere. This was kind of his travels in the afterlife. He met a lot of really nice people and a lot of really mean people. And so, but he did have a lot of what I find really potent and useful things to say about the way the dark and light sides act on us. And he talks a lot about hell, and hell is a state of mind to him. So essentially, hell is, he describes it once, when the pleasure of evil, or when evil is felt as good, that's hell. That when we feel joy in doing evil things, we're experiencing a little bit of hell. That's the mindset that drives people to do all the horrific things that we see around the world. And that draws people together in the spiritual world, just like love can draw people together. So people who are all focused on harming other people, they pull together too as well.
And they're kind of creating that place, that hellish place, I guess, also because we're creators.
Yeah, exactly. It was the having that many people together who are focused on that affects the whole, like if you went there, it affects the landscape. Swedenborg, this is going to be a tangent, but Swedenborg is full of those. He says that in the spiritual world, the objects you see around you are reflective of your own mind. And you can, if you know how to read it, you can tell what somebody else is like just by the way it affects like the birds and the plants around them and stuff. And that communities of really hateful people will have really like abrasive kind of plants, and harmful, like aggressive animals will be drawn to live around them, because that answers to that sort of mindset. So this is like where you'd see like these hellish experiences that people have in near-death experiences. That would be exposure to this side of things. And Swedenborg says that, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, still there are many beautiful people with beautiful minds who are experiencing hellish places. So yeah, that's where I don't always understand, that explanation in a way.
Well, we just had somebody on our program named Howard Storm. He wrote a near-death experience book, My Descent into Death, in 2001. Okay. It was one of the first books that I read. He was one of the first of the like major near-death experience book writers. You know, he was like on Oprah's show and everything for his book. And he is also pretty famous because he had a very negative experience followed by a very positive experience. That he was pulled into this hell kind of situation where there was all these really nasty spirit kind of people who initially deceived him and led him down into this place, and then just attacked him. And it was in that place that he first called out for help. And that was when he was visited by Jesus Christ, and all this love started. And he was actually, leading up to his experience, he was very much an atheist, and he called himself a very not nice person, or he used other words for it. But he says he was a very mean person, and this experience completely turned his life around, and that this important part of it was seeing the dark side and recognizing some of the darkness in him, and how that mattered. But even if you're a nice person and you see that, it doesn't mean that that means you're more evil or something like that. It just, we have to know by contrast what good is, and you have to, nobody's so good that they don't have anything negative that they could improve. You know, like I have some pretty good days, but I got stuff that I'm working on as well. And on a spiritual level, we have to be able to see negative and reject it willingly. You know, that we have to be able to see it for what it is and make that sort of choice.
Do you think it might be our fear that we're encountering?
Yeah, there's all kinds of potentials for the encounter experiences being a tool to get us into the stages of mind that we need to get in to progress in whatever way that is. Whether that's deal with whatever issues you're grappling with, there are times when somehow that experience is leading to your growth. Swedenborg says that nothing negative or harmful or bad is ever allowed to happen. There's a spiritual law. Nothing's allowed to happen unless good can come out of it.
And so, that's important. That's a relief, to hear.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not just to bother us. Swedenborg describes the divine being infinite love and infinite wisdom. And that love and wisdom is not interested in revenge or punishment of people. It's interested in helping us to the best of our abilities. But sometimes people, you'll hear people talk about, I had this experience where I sort of hit bottom. Something hard happened in my life, and that really got me to turn things around. Yes. Or you have experiences where you get deeper. For example, I had a period, in my early 20s or late teens where I had like a lot of sort of psychological stuff going on. I had depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, this really like negative, nasty time. It was really, really painful, and it was not something I would have chosen. However, I can see now that deepened me a lot. Like that was a big part of my personal growth. That without those experiences, it's not like I enjoyed them, but it opened me up in a way that other things haven't. And because my interest in Swedenborg and in spiritual ideas comes from trying to get help. And it was through that I was able to not just learn stuff, but really have a drive to apply it and soak it up. And the other thing that it does, any negative experience does, is introduces us to a little feeling of needing help, that it creates a little bit of humility. Like for Howard Storm, it was getting him to the point where he needed to try to call for help. Because Swedenborg says that arrogance is like the biggest block to spiritual progress. That if we are considering ourselves superior to other people, that's the opposite of the heaven mindset. You think, we go back to the metaphor of the body. Think if the kidneys thought, like, the whole body exists to serve me. I'm more important than, so I'm not going to do my job, and I'm just going to wait for everybody else to serve me. That order is destroyed, and nobody's happy then. So the mindset of heaven is, I don't want to be cooler than anybody else. I want other people. I want to help serve to make happiness. So sometimes the only way we can get there is through noticing through these hard experiences that sort of shake up and let us see what's important.
Yeah, and on the same token there, do you think that, or did Swedenborg perhaps think that we have a choice when we come down on earth on what to work on, in a way? Because I find myself to be a very emotional person, and sometimes that's really difficult. I'm like, why can't things just fall off my sleeves? Like, why do I have to carry all these things and really delve into each and one of the issues that pop up in the day? Like, I have to really process so many things, and it's tiresome. And other people have other issues, and like we spoke about, being a bad person, like maybe there's a reason, maybe there are circumstances, and things were difficult in their childhood, maybe they were beaten, etc., not being loved by mother and father. Like, there are always circumstances. And in my life, I've been like, why did I need to have so many emotions? I'm so emotional. But on some other level, I'm thinking maybe it was a choice that I was going to learn from that. And that's, my path and what I'm going to evolve through in a way. So, yeah, did he speak about that we perhaps are choosing this?
Well, I think about, particular struggles with particular issues. Yeah, there's some people who probably never have to really struggle with getting emotional about things. And to them, it's just not an issue. And there's others of us are just like, everything really thin-skinned, or this thing bothered me, and now this thing, and now I have to work. This person said this thing to me, so now I got to spend the whole day. And we would love to trade positions with them, but they've got their own set of issues, right? And so they're. Right. I think about Swedenborg talks about these mindsets of heaven and hell, right? That there is a part of. Every part of heaven is directly opposed to a particular part of hell. And what I think that means to me is if you've made progress, if there's a particular issue that you have, you can kind of become the counterpart to that. And only through going through it can you really develop the tools to do that. I think about people who go back and they're trying to be youth counselors or something like that, right? If they've lived through it themselves, if they had a difficult childhood, they're so much more effective in helping those people because they know where that person's coming from. They know how to talk about it. They know what the experience is like. And I wonder if in life we are kind of, going through, sort of navigating the rapids that we are, because we talked about this, our particular contribution that we can make that nobody else can make. Am I building up my tools for that here? Because I know my little corner of life and of struggle, and I've already seen it happen for me in little ways. That some of the things that I've gone through have prepared me to be some kind of help to other people who are going through similar things, and I wouldn't have been able to help them without that. So maybe whatever you're going through, you're really, really learning how to navigate that. And that we're all like building up the ability to be these resources for people, and that's what I've found is really brings closure in a way, or a sense of satisfaction. If something really painful has happened to me, it's there, and I can try to heal from it. But I really start to feel okay about it once I'm able to turn that experience into a way to help someone else who's having that same experience. Right. That to me feels like, okay, I'm okay with the whole thing. Like it just brings you a certain kind of joy that I don't know any other way to get that. So there's one thought. And I did want to say about the circumstances that you were talking about. Swedenborg says that he talked to a lot of angels and a lot of negative spirits, right? It was actually the negative spirits that were interested in judging people and calling them evil. The angels, they don't look for evil in people. He says that when they look at people, they just like to focus on the good things about them. And if they see the bad things, they just put a good interpretation on it. That actually, counter to this sort of judgmental idea of God and angels, that actually heaven is not at all interested in criticizing people and judging. And and everybody has life circumstances, and it's not like we're judged on some absolute scale of how many times did you do something bad. Everybody has these issues in their life, just like you said. Something can have happened to them that makes them more prone to that. So my job is to work on looking for the good in people. It doesn't mean I'm not going to set boundaries or something like that if they need to be set, but part of my own spiritual work for myself is the bad part in me wants to judge everyone and wants to pick on them and just laugh at what's wrong with them, so that I don't have to look at what's wrong with me. But that's not the way. The hard thing to do is, even if somebody's bothering you, after you've taken the external actions to like make sure everyone's safe, how do I find a way to love that person and really want them to be happy in the long run, in whatever form that takes?
I saw one of your videos and I found it so interesting and really consoling, because I've had some times in my life where I have had a lot of negative thoughts. Mm-hmm. Like I think it was in 2011 where I was really bothered with that all the time, negative thoughts. And the other day I also had this thought. I was watching the news and I had this really nasty thoughts about someone I watched on television. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, I stopped for a moment. That's not my thought. I don't mean that. I don't agree with that thought. And then the video that you had on your YouTube channel was about negative spirits feeding us with these thoughts. So did Swedenborg think that negative self-talk, etc., is coming from the outside, externally? Or is it a mixture of perhaps our ego, or whatever you want to call it? Perhaps?
Sure.
Yeah.
This has been the part of Swedenborg that I have found the most helpful to me. Swedenborg did think that we're being influenced by external stuff. That the negative self-talk you get, and exactly that phenomenon you're talking about there, like, wait, that's not mine. Like, where did that even come from? Like, this is a very ugly thought. Like, why is this even in my head? Swedenborg was to the point where when he had something like that, a thought like that, he could not only recognize it, but he could look and see, okay, what spirits did this come from? And why did they put it there? And what were they trying to do? And he could actually tell them off, like say, hey, get out of here, leave me alone. That became his perceptive experience. And he described exactly how that affected him. And it was through his description of those systems that I was able to get a lot of relief from my own overwhelming negative thoughts. And this has gone even beyond, I mean, I've had interviews on our show with people who have worked with schizophrenic or psychotic patients who are hearing active voices in their heads, not just thoughts, but audible sort of voices. And they follow the same patterns as the things that Swedenborg is describing. And what he essentially says is what I was saying before, that we are in spiritual community right now. And we're actually all kind of in the middle between light and dark. So we get influence from both sides. Unfortunately, some people are getting overwhelmed by the negative side, and at different times in our lives we do. But to me, to understand, and I it's an idea, people can believe it or not, but I've done a lot of looking at this and like working with it. And it seems to me like this is the best explanation I've come across for the phenomena of the mind, that we are free to accept or reject the things that come into our mind. Because we sort of initially think, oh, this is all me, so it's all true. But if we think critically about that and say, wait, this could be coming from, this is just a negative spiritual community thing that's coming to me. Do I really want this? And is this true? And Swedenborg said all evil and falsity goes together. So everything negative is in some way false. Even if it seems to be resting on a true point. He was once talking to some spirits who were shooting false things at him, and they were sort of using true-ish points to weave a harmful narrative. And he was saying, okay, everything, those points are true, but because you're using them to support a falsity, the whole thing is false.
Just want to repeat that. You're saying that everything negative and evil is false. It's a lie. It's not real.
Yes.
Wow, that's huge.
Because reality, it's huge. It's huge, and it's because reality is that God is love, and that everybody has access to love, and that there's this divine providence operating in every moment that's protecting us and moving us forward, and that if we want to go towards it, there's all kinds of happiness in front, and all the negative. Think about all the kinds of negative self-talk that you can get. The criticizing. Let's say I get negative self-talk criticizing me as a person, or you get it criticizing you as a person. It's not true. Anything like, oh, you're not good enough, or you are wrong for this, or you're stupid for this. It's not true. Everybody's good enough. We already talked about how everybody is this potentially unique, eternal contributor, equally contributing to the human race, this unassailable, beautiful creation, right? That's what we are. So anything critical about us is essentially false, because that's not how we are. Even when we're being criticized for things that we've done that are negative in our heads, we were pushed into that by this negativity in the first place. It's not us. So if you get down to it, everything evil and falsity go together. It's like they evil and falsity have this negative love for each other, but goodness and truth have the same thing. So love and wisdom have the same thing, meaning everything that brings love has truth within it, and everything that's true will feel loving when you really hear it.
I just thought about Buddhism and Zen right now. where they are talking about observing the thoughts, that you are not your thoughts, which is kind of a bit the same, actually, that we can have the ability to put the thoughts outside of ourselves and look at them in a way.
Yes, and I love the way that Buddhism puts that. And there was a guy named D.T. Suzuki who was sort of brought Zen Buddhism westward, and he wrote a book about Swedenborg, and he called it Buddha of the North, because there were so many parallels between particularly Eastern and Zen Buddhism thought and Swedenborg. And you'll find that there's a lot of people making commentary on that. And from what what I do know about Buddhism, there are many parallels, and some of my favorite are in what you're talking about. This not serving those thoughts. It's a critical concept.
But it's not easy, though, and I just want to stress that, because this can be a tool, to put the thoughts outside. But it's not easy because we do identify with it. We think we're one. We think we are the thoughts. So I guess it's a practice. It's a practice,
and there's no guaranteed results. I mean, I've been trying this for a long time, and there are days when I'm doing really well and days when I'm not doing well at all. Part of what I'm trying to do in my work with Swedenborg Foundation and in making these videos is figure out more effective techniques. You think about technology, and then we found like really good ways to transmit signals. We found really good ways to construct vehicles and get from place to place. But I sort of feel like as a human race, we don't have very good spiritual technology. There are some systems that work pretty well. I'm thinking about like Alcoholics Anonymous or something like that. There's these tools people have written and made that are easy to apply consistently, and you make progress with them. But there's only a few. And like this negative thought stuff, yeah, okay, I did good today, but now I can't get away from this one. I'm hoping that whatever, in the next few years or next few decades, we start to make more and more of these, like, okay, here's how you do this, and if you do this, then you can do that. Create tools to help each other, because it's not easy. And it doesn't matter how much I know, there's times when I just can't overcome something. And no, certainly if somebody's watching, like, it's if you've been trying but you're not succeeding, that's fine. All of us are doing the same thing too.
Yeah, and especially with emotions, how to handle emotions, and small things can just create this turmoil inside. And I've heard, and spoken to many about this, like accept the feeling, moving through it like weather and everything. And it sounds so easy, but it surely is not.
Yeah, it's not. The most useful thing I've ever found for detaching from things is not just to say, this is not mine, but to say, like, this is somebody else's. You know what I mean? Like, this fear is coming from these negative spiritual entities. That's one of the reasons why I'm so drawn to it. Like, if I think about it like, almost like it's a commercial or something, like they're trying to get, like, hey, buy into fear. Here's why you should be afraid. Remember how this could happen? Remember when this did happen? This person said this. You think about how people make commercials, that they think about the psychology, what affects people. We're going to get a shot where this person looks really good in the sun, and then that there's that much thought put into it. If I sort of think, okay, this particular, obviously not all our feelings we need to detach from, but if we're finding one that we think like, this just only brings problems, to think about it as like, this has intent against me in it, and it's not mine. That's the only time I've been able to really make progress with letting go of something. Just to say, okay, well, it's not mine because I know it's somebody else's, which is a strange.
That's a key, because I think if you resist it, then you create a struggle. But if you it's not mine, but I let it go, then you kind of accept it. I think there's something in that which is important, the letting go part, the accepting part.
Yeah.
Which is difficult because you don't want to feel it. So you create the struggle. And that's where I think the problem is sometimes.
Yeah, can I say another thing that's been helpful to me there?
Yeah.
And it's, like I said, I still haven't figured it out, but sometimes building up kind of a sense of trust in what Swedenborg calls divine providence, or the guiding from divine love and wisdom over everything. Like sometimes when I'm getting fears and anxieties and those kind of negative emotions and feelings, it carries with it a sense of I'm somehow in danger. Like I'm in danger of some kind of physical harm or psychological harm or emotional or some kind of damage. My value's been damaged somehow, something like that. The more that I have worked on this trust that I'm going to be okay, like that in the end, whatever word you want to use, God or the divine is got a plan for me and has got a place for me, and I'm going that. The more that I push towards that, then when the stuff comes that riles me up, I can say more. Okay, well, you're coming to me, fears, and saying you should worry about this, but I'm not in the worrying about this department. You want to refer that to the divine. They're kind of my, you can get like a hedge fund or an asset manager who manages your retirement stuff. So if someone comes to me for a money question, I say, oh, you talk to them. I sort of say, okay, well, this is not the department for worries about the value of Curtis. I don't decide my value. You want to talk to God about that.
I love that.
That's sort of like it's one that they don't see coming, I feel like.
Yeah. I've heard that before, actually. Leave it to the divine. Surrender. I hear that a lot, and I think that's a beautiful thought, because then you are showing the universe that I believe that you got me.
Mm-hmm.
You're
exactly.
protecting me. So a little about now the last minutes we got here about angels and how we can contact them and why we're not actually seeing them and feeling them as much as we would like to.
Okay. Well, I'm not trying to plug my show here or anything, but we did just do an episode on that last Monday. It's called The Power of Heaven's Angels. And that's actually a title from one of Swedenborg's chapters. So if anybody wants to go there, they can watch that. But I will tell you that we're interacting with angels right now. Swedenborg says the power to think and to love and all that's coming in through heaven. So angels are with us in that power. He says, without the power of heaven, you couldn't move a step. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean life is how we want it to be. Our good thoughts and feelings, we're feeling angels with us on that. When you get this sense of like, oh, that's cool, or I like that person, or I did a good job at that. It's not the same as like a being of white light appearing and giving you a big hug, but just to think about like, that was an angel with me. They're there. They're always there. Swedenborg says that we always have angels intimately with us. We have an angel closely with our thoughts, an angel closely with our feelings, and then we have this community around us. They're very present, and they're particularly present in our goals or our aims. That's where we can align more closely with them when we have goals that are more and more angelic. And all that means is loving the good of the human race in whatever form, loving the happiness of other people. The more that our life goals kind of focus on being a good part of the body, serving, the more we align with angels. However, in terms of like getting to hear them, see them, all that stuff, it would be nice if we could do that more often. And Swedenborg says that, like I was talking about, he says that's how it used to be. There are a couple of ways that you can push in that direction. The more that you think like angels think, the more close to them you get. And
like
actually
attracts like.
Exactly. So we have to travel more in that direction. Swedenborg is kind enough to kind of lay out how they do think. We did an episode called 3 Simple Ways to Love Everyone, which is based on 3 ways that the angels think. One of those is wishing not just well to other people, but better to other people than to ourselves. And that's like not meaning like, oh, I want you to be happier than me, so I'll make myself less happy. It's like, no, like I'm so excited about your happiness that it would make me more happy to know that you're happy than even if I got that happy. So that this like love your neighbor to the second degree. Swedenborg says that's very hard to do while you're on Earth. The most we can really get is like care as much about other people. But if we even start approaching that in the next life, we come into that. So, think about other people's happiness, really like make it a hobby, care about it. Another thing is he says angels will separate attributes from people, meaning if there's somebody who has a problem with a temper, or they're critical, or they have some negative attribute, angels will not think, oh, that person, they'll think it's too bad that that person is afflicted with that thing, but that's not them. You know, that they've been captured by that negative emotion. And even though we gotta like protect ourselves and everyone from that, what would they be like without that? And I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just sort of this subtle distinction that a person is more than their negative qualities. And then also just trying to think about, hey, this person is an eternal thing. You know, even if they're in a state right now where they don't seem like much, you know, think about down the road, there's all kinds of good things that can come their way. So the more that we try to think like that, the more we get in touch with heaven. And that some people get these experiences where they get to see angels and be with angels, but all of us can be in spirit in community with angels. And that leads us to these happier thoughts and feelings. Although it's a lot of work. You know, life is always going to be a decent amount of work. And I wish I could, sorry, my phone went crazy. I wish that I could say, hey, just do this, and then you won't have any more bad days, and angels will be with you.
I'm going to interview Diana Cooper, and she's called the Angel Lady, and she just asked to see an angel, and all of a sudden she saw an angel.
It happens like that for some people, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, I like I've heard a lot of stories of people say, "Oh, I never really prayed to God before, but then I did, and suddenly this thing happened." And I'm kind of like, hey, wait a second. Like I prayed a lot. Like why don't I get anything?
I've been asking all my life, never seen anything.
And I want to say something about that. We did a show called "Why Don't Our Loved Ones Communicate with Us More?" Because when people die, some people will get these like beautiful visions of right when the person is dying. They'll say, you know, they'll stop by, like they're in spirit. They'll stop by someone's room and say, "Hey, I'm going now. I love you," and then they'll go. Or people will see them in their dreams shortly after they've died, but other people won't. Other people will get nothing. And why does that happen? And what the conclusions we were drawing there goes back to the complexity of the spiritual world that we were talking about. And like I was saying in the beginning of the show, you know, I'm talking to you over this Skype setup right now. If I accidentally kick my cord and the webcam gets disconnected, you can't see me anymore. It doesn't matter how much we want to see each other. It doesn't matter how much we're friends or we have good intentions. The camera's not plugged in. It can't happen. And so if there's the same kind of complexity in the spiritual world, it's not as superficial as plugs and that sort of thing, but you know, if there's like spiritual sort of pollution because there's so much negativity in the human race or whatever it is, there's some reason. It's not just arbitrary, like angels and God or whatever are there like, well, you're not going to get a visit. You know, they want to visit everyone. But there's But there's a reason. Like I said, nothing bad can happen without a reason. I don't know. I really want to see an angel, but I don't know how that would overall affect my state of mind. I don't know if that's really the path to the most growth for me or not. Maybe I need to, if I'm going to host a web show about spiritual things, maybe it's nice that I haven't had an experience like that, because then I can relate to the rest of the people who haven't, instead of like, oh, I've already been there and seen it. I have to work my way to it just like everybody else. So who knows? But I guess the overall message is there's a good reason, and the reason is not because you're less important than other people or you don't deserve it or you're not loved. It's just you'll see, you know. Yes,
I've kind of arrived at the same conclusion that there's probably a reason why I haven't seen what I've been asking so many times to see, because I wouldn't be so curious otherwise.
Right. Okay, well, let's make a deal. If you see an angel, you tell him to come to me, and I'll do the same thing to you. Okay.
Awesome. Deal. Thank you so much, Curtis. This has been so inspiring. It's been a delight to speak to you, and I will definitely continue to watch your YouTube videos. They're awesome, and I recommend my viewers to do the same. And can you just tell us where we can find you and where we can find Swedenborg's books, for instance?
Sure. Yeah, well, first I just want to say thanks for having me on the program. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun, and I like the spirit you have around it. Of I want to figure it out. I'm going to ask all these questions, and I wish you very well on your journeys, and I'll continue following it on YouTube. You can find us youtube.com/offTheLeftEye. If you go to Swedenborg.com, that's the Swedenborg Foundation's website, and there you can download all of Swedenborg's books for free as an ebook or a PDF. Also, in our program, whenever we have a Swedenborg quote, we have a link to download the book. So you can do that there, and you can get in touch with us on Facebook as well, all the places. But if you just go to Swedenborg.com, you'll find everything from there, or YouTube.com/offTheLeftEye.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Curtis.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching, guys. And make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't before. Much light from Oslo. Bye-bye.